Hey guys, my name is Cassidy and you're watching That Spooky Lifestyle, where we bring the ooky, the spooky, the creepy and the crawly into our everyday lives. Now today we're going to be taking a trip through the canals of Xochimilco to discover an isolated island filled with macabre and mystery. But before we dive in, let's take a quick look at what we talked about last week. So taking a closer look at a tarot deck, it is made up of 78 cards. 22 of those cards are called Major Arcana. Now, these cards usually represent major life milestones, not always, but more often. Oof, I think I'm getting a premonition. I'll link it below in case you want to check it out. Now, I know it's been a while since we've sat down for a good scary story, so snuggle in because this topic was actually suggested by a viewer, and it's a real spine chiller. Our story begins in the rural area of Xochimilco, Mexico. Xochimilco is a combination of Xochi and Mili, which means where the flowers grow or field of flowers, which makes sense since the area was deemed a World Heritage Site in 1991 because of its floating gardens. The Xochimilco Canal area is surrounded by brightly colored barges. There's always music playing, a lot of parties are held here. It's a very lively area, and people who live there say it's a mix of modern and traditional Mexico. To get around in the canals, you need to rent one of these barges or boats, and they're pushed along the canals gondola style, which kind of gives you this like romantic nostalgia feel. As you're pushed down the canals and the music and the chatter and the busyness just starts to fade away, you're really transported into a completely serene world. It's still, it's quiet, it's peaceful, just surrounded by nature. Much like a siren luring an unsuspecting sailor to his doom, there is a darker secret hidden within the canals of Xochimilco, known as Isla de las Muñecas, also known as the Island of Dolls. Tucked away inside this beautiful oasis lies an island that is cut off from the rest of the world. Rundown shacks litter the area, vegetation is sprawling over long forgotten items, branches are weaving through chain link fences, nature is starting to reclaim the area. As you walk through the island, you really get this feeling of life lost. You get glimpses of the past, things that were once practical and useful, now rotting and withering away, really adding to the feeling of abandonment. But most disturbing are the eyes that follow you while you're on the island. Riddled amongst the trees, tied to the walls of the shack, and just spread thoroughly throughout the island are children's dolls in different stages of decay. Dolls that were once shiny and colorful, instilling excitement and wonder, now eerily blanket the island in an array of dilapidated limbs. Broken, dirty, and draped in cobwebs, these once charming toys now make the island feel more like a graveyard than something you'd see on the shelves of Toys R Us. Each of the shacks on the island are painted with dolls across all the walls. Some are tied to the ceilings. Laundry lines are scattered throughout the island with multiple doll parts hanging from each line. It really gives this Christmas lights effect of doll parts just hanging from the trees. One of the most terrifying things about the island is the sheer volume of dolls that there are. The minute you step foot in this place, there is not a corner on the island that a doll will not be watching you. To understand this island better, we need to go back to the very beginning, to the very first doll. Now, this doll has different names depending on who's telling the story, what version you're hearing, but in the version that I heard, her name is Augustinata. You can pick her out from other dolls because she is in the main hut on the island. She's surrounded by other dolls in almost a shrine-like manner, and a donation box sits at the bottom of her feet. Island visitors often leave trinkets or donations for this doll, hoping that it will appease it and give them her blessing. Some even think that this doll has the ability to answer prayers or even grant wishes. But how did this very first doll end up on the island? And how did so many accumulate after? Like, what is it all for? To begin to answer those questions, we need to learn more about the island's late resident, Don Julian. Don Julian Santana Barrera was born in 1921 in La Asunción, which is an area or district of Xochimilco, Mexico. Not much is known about his younger years, but eventually he did start cultivating land and selling his produce to the local area. From what I've read, he did struggle a bit financially during this time, and he was often spotted at a local tavern, and he eventually did become a beggar. He was often asking passerbys for money, or preaching the word of God, or praying out loud. So this was actually viewed as blasphemy by the locals, so Don Julian slowly became more and more alienated. Eventually he made the decision to leave La Asunción altogether and live in the canals of Xochimilco. He grew vegetation on the island with his chinampa. This is a technique used in Mesoamerican culture, which relied on small rectangular areas of fertile arable land to grow crops on shallow lake beds, so the island was a perfect spot for this. Don Julian lived in isolation on the island and would only really come in occasionally to trade for his vegetation. Now, there are different accounts of when this actually happened, but at some point when Don Julian was on the island, he stumbled across the body of a little girl who had supposedly drowned in the canals. He pulled her out and tried to revive her, but it was too late. She had already passed away. Then, not long after Don had found the girl, a small doll came floating down the canal, and as you might imagine, this is Augustinata, and this is the first doll that Don Julian ever collected. Don Julian fished out this doll, assuming that it belonged to the little girl, and hung it in his shack as a sign of respect. Now, this is where the story takes a few different turns depending on what you believe. Some people believe that the spirit of the little girl is stuck on the island, and so Don Julian was collecting dolls to bring her more and more toys to help appease her spirit. In other stories, the little girl's spirit is an evil one that is tormenting Don Julian, and so he keeps collecting dolls hoping that it will put her spirit to rest. In other stories, the little girl's spirit is actually a protector, and all the dolls that Don Julian is collecting are to help protect him from a more malevolent, dark force that lurks within the canals. When Don Julian was alive, he often talked about how scared he was of this presence that kept trying to tempt him into the waters of the canal. He heard voices and cries, even women screaming, during his time that he lived on the island. Sometimes he would refer to this evil spirit as a mermaid or a giant fish that kept trying to lure him into the murky water. Keep in mind, he lived on this island alone for 50 years. If I started hearing that stuff out there, I would be absolutely terrified. Now, although Don Julian describes this evil spirit as a mermaid or a fish, some people actually believe that he was being hunted by La Llorona or the Weeping Woman. La Llorona has strong ties to canals, waterways, rivers, as well as ties to luring men and children to their untimely deaths. Again, people think that maybe these dolls were protecting Don Julian from La Llorona trying to lure or tempt him into the water. Whether it was to appease a little girl's spirit or protect against more deviant creatures, Don Julian spent 50 years collecting and hanging over 1,500 dolls on this island. As the story began to be passed by word of mouth, this island started to gain interest with the modern traveler, especially within the dark tourist community. People from around the world are sending their dolls to this location to be hung on the island, allowing people from all walks of life to take part in this legend, which I think that idea is brilliant. Like, who wouldn't want to go to that island knowing that, you know, a year or two ago you sent a doll there to be hung? Don Julian Santana Barrera started the Island of Dolls around the 1950s and had a very unusual death in 2001. He was found drowned in the canals in almost the exact same spot where he had said he found that little girl all those years earlier. Just like any good spooky tale, this myth has intensified since the passing of Don Julian, because now you can't get any solid answers. It's everyone chiming in their own thoughts and ideas, which is helping grow the legend and the lore surrounding this area. It just leaves you with so many questions. Was the little girl's spirit really evil? Was it La Llorona? Did she drown both Don and the little girl even after all that time? Or was it just a weird coincidence? We'll never really know. In classic spooky fashion, this island comes with its own curses, hexes, and warnings attached. Should any adventurous passerby go to the island and maybe take interest in one of the dolls and want to take them home, they may want to think twice. Locals swear that when anyone takes something from the island, they are met with an untimely death, normally on the roads leading from Xochimilco. From my research, I couldn't find any official reports to back up these superstitions, but would you really want to tempt the spirits on the Island of Dolls? Now, believe it or not, some of the locals actually don't view this island as haunted or creepy. They actually look at it as kind of charming. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Some people believe that this island was a way for Don Julian to express himself in a world where maybe he felt alone or didn't really fit in. So the collection of dolls was actually more of a way to show his personality, which, you know, he may have had a harder time doing in other ways. And as far as the lore, many people who are close to Don Julian aren't very sure of the validity of him finding the little girl. I didn't find any account of this little girl in my research, but those who were close to Don Julian said that he would talk about this incident with a lot of passion and vigor. So they think something did happen, they're just not sure exactly what. But whatever it was, they all agreed that it changed Don Julian forever. Adding to the superstitions, a lot of the locals view the area around the canals as this huge graveyard because of all the battles that have happened there throughout history, from blood spilled from the conquistadors to Aztecs fighting over different fertile land. This area is no stranger to tragedy and has taken many lives at its shores throughout the years. This massive loss of life may be why the area is such a hotbed for supernatural activity. Some people who visit the island even say that they hear the dolls whispering and crying just like Don Julian did. And maybe this means that the dolls themselves have their own malevolent intentions. The fact that this island's lore has just so many twists and turns, and the fact that it's isolated, has really made it a must-see vacation stop for any dark tourist, anyone who's into the spooky and unusual. Let me know, would you vacation at the island of dolls? But that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this eerie vacation tale. Definitely let me know down below if there's any other ghoulish topics you'd like me to cover. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Instagram so you can keep up with all my spooky updates. I'll have them linked below. Please subscribe to this channel if you want more ghoulish tales. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in my next video.